They called her Empress Valeth of the Concord, sovereign of 12 star realms, unifier of warring species, the one whose word could end civilizations or save them. Her image flickered across Holos in 1,000 systems, tall, silver-skinned, eyes like burning nebulae, posture unyielding as law itself. To most of the galaxy, she was distant, terrifying, absolute. To me, she was the woman who once shared a ration bar with a starving human on a forgotten moon. I hadn't seen her in 23 standard years. Back then, I was just Lieutenant Aaron Hale of the Terran Exploration Corps, assigned to a diplomatic escort mission so minor it barely earned a footnote. We were sent to Caris 9, a neutral world racked by civil unrest, to evacuate foreign dignitaries before everything collapsed. That was where I first met her, though she wasn't an empress then. She was a political hostage. Her name, she told me quietly as artillery shook the distant horizon, was Valeth. No titles, no honorifics. Just a woman sitting beside me in a ruined transit hub, cloak torn, regal posture abandoned out of sheer exhaustion. Most species looked down on humans back then. We were new, loud, short-lived, and, by galactic standards, fragile. But when the extraction ship was destroyed and chaos swallowed the city, none of that mattered. All that mattered was survival. For 3 days, we hid in the underlevels while rival factions fought above us. I shared my water. She shared her knowledge of alien patrol routes. When raiders breached the tunnels, it was my rifle that held them back. When my leg was crushed by falling debris, it was her strength that dragged me to safety. On the 4th day, rescue finally came. Her people arrived in sleek black warships, cutting through the sky like divine judgment. As they secured the zone, armored figures knelt the moment they saw her. I remember the look on her face, then shock, followed by something like sorrow. "You are important," I said, dazed and bleeding. She met my eyes. I was supposed to disappear here. Before I could ask more, medics pulled me away. By the time I woke up aboard a human cruiser, she was gone. For years, I wondered if she'd survived. Then the galaxy changed. The fractured Concord worlds united under a single banner, forged by a leader whose strategic brilliance and unrelenting will ended wars that had burned for centuries. Species that once slaughtered each other now sat at the same tables. Trade flourished. Borders stabilized. And at the center of it all stood Empress Valeth. When humanity was invited to formally join the Concord, I was no longer a lieutenant. I was a commander, and, by some twist of fate, chosen as part of Earth's diplomatic delegation. I told myself she wouldn't remember me. Why would a ruler of galaxies recall one human soldier from a half-forgotten disaster? The throne chamber was vast beyond description, a cathedral of stars suspended in transparent void glass. Delegates from dozens of species filled the air with murmurs and pheromones and shifting colors. At the far end, upon a dais of living crystal, sat the Empress. She looked unchanged, timeless. As protocol demanded, we approached, bowed, spoke our prepared words. Then her gaze found me. The galaxy went quiet. Every sensor in the chamber spiked as the Empress of the Concord rose from her throne, something she had never done for any delegation. Gasps rippled outward. Guards tensed, unsure whether to intervene or kneel. She descended the steps slowly, eyes never leaving mine. When she stood before me, close enough that I could see the faint scar along her collarbone, the one she'd gotten shielding me from shrapnel on Caris 9, I forgot every line I was supposed to say. "Aaron Hale," she said softly. My heart nearly stopped. "Why, Your Majesty?" Her hand lifted just slightly. The entire chamber froze. "For the galaxy," she announced, voice carrying effortlessly. "This human is Commander Hale of Earth, representative of his species." Then she leaned closer, just enough that only I could hear her. "After all this time," she whispered. There was no triumph in her voice, no arrogance, only relief. Later, behind sealed doors, she dismissed her guards and advisors alike. For the first time, the Empress of the Concord sat across from me not as a ruler, but as a woman burdened by centuries of responsibility. "You were not supposed to matter," she said quietly. "Humans were not supposed to matter. But you stayed when you could have fled. You protected me when you thought I was no one." I shrugged. Seemed like the right thing to do. Her eyes softened, a dangerous thing I realized for someone who ruled the stars. "That is why your species frightens us. You do not measure worth by power or longevity. You choose instinctively." She told me then of the years after Karis, 9, how she'd claimed her birthright, crushed rivals, united the Concord through force and diplomacy alike. How every decision had weighed on her. How lonely absolute authority truly was. "I remembered you," she admitted. "The human who saw me before I became inevitable." Humanity's admission into the Concord passed unanimously. Trade agreements followed. Cultural exchanges. Military alliances. But none of that made headlines like what happened next. At the closing ceremony, before trillions of viewers, Empress Valeth did something unprecedented. She named a human as her voice to the Concord, a permanent advisory role no species had ever held alone. Me. As I stood beside her on the dais, I felt the weight of history pressing down. She leaned toward me once more, her presence steady, grounding. "The galaxy believes I rule alone," she said softly. "But even empires are shaped by small moments." I met her gaze and smiled. Guess one of those moments happened in a tunnel on a forgotten moon. She smiled back just a little, and in that instant, every species watching learned a quiet, unsettling truth. The Empress who ruled the galaxy was not shaped by power. She was shaped by a human who chose to stay. And after all this time, she never forgot. Some would claim it was the signing of the Concord Accords, or the dissolution of the last warfleet along the rim. Others would point to humanity's rapid rise, how a young, short-lived species became the moral counterweight to ancient empires. But I knew better. The real turning point came on a quiet observation deck overlooking a spiral of newborn stars. Valeth stood beside me. No crown, no guards. The weight of empire momentarily set aside. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked at peace. "I have ruled long enough to know this truth," she said, watching the stars ignite. "Power alone decays. Fear fractures. Control eventually collapses." I said nothing. I had learned that silence, when chosen, could be its own kind of wisdom. She turned to me then, eyes reflecting the light of a forming sun. "The Concord will endure because humans remind us of something we forgot." "What's that?" I asked. "That leadership is not proven by how many kneel before you," she replied, "but by who would stand beside you when you have nothing left to offer." Below us, ships of 100 species moved together in calm, ordered harmony. No weapons charged. No borders contested. Just motion, purpose, cooperation. She placed her hand over mine, an intimate gesture that no camera was allowed to record. "I once whispered those words because I feared I was alone," she said softly. "Now I whisper them because I am not. After all this time,